Next Thursday, from that, we got 2 Alma Adjuster cards. Okay. Dark States, and also the final monthly Bushiroad PR before publication ceases. A new blaster blade worthy of being the Huh. Okay. So, you guys know what I play now. I've been Gear Crawl Queen ever since the Art of Chronojet was revealed at the beginning of G, and Gridon's basically been my go-to for Overdress ever since I decided to pick it up in Set 3, since I didn't really vibe with the other 2 Dark State ride lines. But I've been in the game since literally day 1, and I wasn't always playing decks that go above the Knight. Actually quite the opposite, but I started off with Knights of the Round. Look at this, you can't really tell from all the stupid glare, but this is literally the original one that my friend sent to me from Japan way back in the day. Mainly this one, who, as you just saw in the intro, is getting a brand new promo as the final Bushiroad monthly promo. You know, that we never really get here in the US anyways. So I thought we'd celebrate its release today by talking about the OG Avatar in all of its glory today. Welcome to Blasted Blade Through the Ages. Blasted Blade started off as the avatar of the original Vanguard protagonist, and the poster boy for the game in general. This means that he's always meant to be a Vanguard skill, like every primary grade 3 in the game. Only problem is, this one's a grade 2. So, they gave him one simple skill. No, wait, not that one. Not that either. But technically it works in a funny cyclone deck with a few cards I'll discuss in a little bit. Note, this Knight can slay his enemies with a counterblast too. On Vanguard to hit anything, then on Rearguard to hit a grade 2 or greater, if you had a Royal Paladin Vanguard, which mattered because back in the day there weren't enough cards to go in each deck, so you could literally just cross-clan. God, I miss the good old days. Of course, you're only on grade 2 until we start talking about G format in the grade 2 game, so they had to give our friends some grade 3 support. At the beginning it was Ganslot here, who's an unprecedented 9k base, since everyone else under the sun had literally 10k or, God forbid, 11k as a big power threshold. But he had the power to not only give himself a then-threatening plus 5k critical if he had a Blaster Blade in Soul, but the ability to search out even more Blaster Blades. Honestly, not too bad as a set 1 card, it just would have been better if it kept up with the rest of the gang for defensive purposes. This was obviously meant to be a second fiddle to the actual Royal Paladin boss. But we're only talking about Blaster Blade today, so... In a few sets, Blaster Blade met his evil counterpart in Blaster Dark. This Shadow Paladin led the Avatar down a dark path to become a big old dragon and introduced some evil paladins to the playstyle of sacrificing allies to gain skills and power. You know, like Tachikaze. But it's alright though, because they quickly decided to become the yin and yang of the true Knight of Chaos. 12k double crit forever is pretty okay on this guy, but 12k base once again was just a little bit shorter of the other 2 cross rides of that generation, being 13,000. Still, it somehow managed to get tier 1 for a while, and look at what he's doing now! Being a 15k is infinitely more special as a cross ride, and only really rivaled by a few gimmick commons, including the best card in SOK that isn't Leonor. Not to mention it synergizes each time you shove a blaster in its soul, either retire a card or gain a drive check. Honestly, kinda slaps. I might start testing it against soon, since a retire-heavy deck with little field presence on the opponent's turns seems like it might be okay in the sheer renewing meta. I'm gonna have to start cooking this a little later, aren't I? Don't forget to subscribe to see whenever those testing and or deck videos go live. Once we moved on to the best format of the game, blasters didn't really do too much. Probably because the anime lore said that paladins didn't exist and became gold paladins or whatever, but at least Blade got a spirit form. Technically so did Dark, but I'm not putting them both on screen because I have to make a whole new list for Shadow Paladins, and it's relatively the same thing. 10k Blade was one of the first to hit that defensive threshold, but it came at a cost of instantly vanishing whenever it's attacked. Not the best defender for that, but gave him a huge heart which meant protection from a Vanguard attack, and his retire skill was given a reduced counterblast 1 cost, even if that was partially due to restricting his targets and conditions just a little bit. Moving from the best format in the game to the other best format in the game, Cannabis Legion! Just having a grade 3 reliant format where you had to tactically recycle and bait everything opened up the floodgates for everything weird in this game. But we'll get back to that in a future video, I suppose. As for our Knight of the Round here, he gained a new family in the Secret Archetype. Blaster Blade himself is just another Blaster Blade. You can counterblast retire a grade 2 or greater, this time at the cost of having a Secret Vanguard, which you always will be in a Secret deck. Still, good to see that the counterblast 1 is starting to become the norm for the cost. And return to popping any grade 2 rear guard in case your opponent was cheeky enough to slide one of their key pieces back to the back row. Also, it has one of the best misprints in the game. Look at this. Him's a Shadow Paladin. Of course, the thing that makes Legion so interesting is being able to return cards back to deck to fuse 2 different cards as the Vanguard in the aforementioned Legion state. Let's take a look at some of the Blaster Blade's compatriots. Wiggle has a pretty basic skill, letting you call any grade 2 or greater Seeker out of deck upon Legion, but we'll forget that basic skill for it being a trial deck card, and it being the goodest of boys. Think Saber here is proof that Kai was the anime protagonist for a while, because it does its best Overlord impression to restand, by which I mean you can pay a pretty high cost to Superior rewrite a clone of it from the deck and immediately Legion it. Not the best cost considering you could whip with no copies in deck, and Counterblast 2 Soul Blast 3 with discard is tough, but putting more options into the drop zone to set them back with Legion is the thing, and you can always gimmick it to an infinite loop by having a thing Saber and Soul when you do the Superior Legion, so you can Soul Blast the Legion and put back in and have another one ready to go, and you can probably see why this Royal Dragon has some potential. Oh look, there he is. I didn't even do that on purpose. Then there's this dork. Well, I haven't really talked about him before, and I probably won't again. Fettuccine Alfredo here is basically the original king of all things Royal Paladins. This one is Blaster Blade's BFF. Both the original and secret flavors could actually Legion with him. As for what he does, Al's main skill is a Counterblast 2 to Superior Call the Seeker. Then, if you happen to have a basically full field, he can just kind of get a crit, which essentially makes him a 26k double crit for free as long as you're not playing against a control deck. Alright, fine, I'll talk about him. When you ride it over a Blaster or a Swordsman of Light, you could call some Blasters or Swordsman of Light. The end. Oh yeah, I guess that a bunch of Blasters got retooled into this little Swordsman of Light group right here. Ahmed is Blade himself, so it's the only melee one I'll talk about. Rapier's pretty good too though. Having a searchable grade 1 booster that has resist is pretty good. Anyways, like I said, Ahmed is Blaster Blade, which, fun fact, is the name of the weapon itself, and not the actual unit. The original Blaster Blade is actually Blaster Dark picking up the Blaster Blade weapons, so Ahmed cares so much about being a Blaster Blade that he turns into a Blaster Blade after it hits Vanguard while your boy is out for it for a cost of Counterblast 1. But hey, at least he makes Blades on-call retire free and swings as 11k, which used to be a number before the VBoot power creep. Long story short, Swordsman of Light Squad are literally built for the King of Knights, but they still are blasters at heart, so we can stand them, I suppose. I honestly can't believe we made this far into the video without talking about G format. I'm literally the Gear Chronicle guy. While Blade himself didn't really get a new form for the format, he did get a handful of new cards for a dedicated G-Zone, not just Crystal Luster Dragon, which I guess you still do technically use, since the Triple Drive Majesty lore giving everything 3-card guard is kinda lit. Oh yeah, I guess I should talk about these guys. Most importantly, there is a trio of strats that specifically target an Alfred or Blaster Soul. For mid to amazing, we'll start off here with the Myriad Soul Saber Dragon, which is an upgrade of the old Soul Saber Dragon that let you Soul Blast cards to give you card power. This one lets you Soul Blast some cards to give you cards power. More importantly though, Blaster Blade's 2 BFFs and Ganslot and Alfred have insane little grade 4 power-ups. Ganslot not only gives you Blaster Blade's resist when he's chilling out in the G-Zone, but when it attacks, it gives you resources back in the form of a counter charge, at the cost of gaining a drive check and a crit. By which I mean you swing quad drive double damage while freeing up your counter blast for your other abilities. Pretty nice considering the original has the cost of 2 counter blasts just to gain a crit. Of course, Alfred can't be outdone by his fellow Cavalier. This time for a counterblast and a Persona flip? Yeah, you remember back in the day when you had to shell out way too much money just to get a second copy of a card just to flip it over to activate its effect, but then you only really need to have one of it now, and they're a lot cheaper because of the premium secondary market. But hey, this is a great time to plug my page on TCG Player. Check it out if you like what I do here and want to help support me on this channel. Anyways, paying that cost is going to give a Blaster Blade a small power up and a twin drive ability. That's right, Kendra was gaining drive checks off his rear guards before it had an overtrigger. Pretty insane considering the fact that a card I'm going to talk about in just about half a minute gives Blaster Blade the ability to restand. Oh, and there's technically one more thing to note. This boy Mario, he lets you recycle a grade 3 from drop zone on stride if your Vanguard has a 10k or less attack, which is usually bad, whether you remember the original MLB's attack is 10,000, and the Legion does technically count both of your hearts as Vanguard, like a true Time Lord. So if you're in a secret deck, it sure does count Blaster Blade for the cost. Either way, free card cycling is always nice, especially now we got those nice little grade 3 heal triggers for G-Guard costs. And speaking of G-Guards, while Royal Paladin ones are typically pretty mid in general, the Blaster build has a pretty special one in the form of Marin. You know, this original just 8k generic grade 1 that has no effect and turns into basically the grade 1 for the ride line in any future iterations. This big wizard has the ability to call any grade 1 or greater out of the deck with a boosted shield for a Soul Blast. I can say some cute text here, but I'm just going to drop the action, say 2 words, and move on. Perfect Guard. This thing can superior call Perfect Guards out of your deck. Just make sure that you play one that activates when placed in general, and not just placed from hand, because that will matter for the sake of this card. Personally, I recommend to keep Doggo. Speaking of cool doggos, remember how I mentioned Wingle and Barkle before? Oh, I guess I didn't. Winklebrave is the goodest boy with the ability to search out a blaster if it boosts a thing that hits. Basically, every version of this dog does it, and its design clearly inspired Zacian. And my dog. Barkle was the starter too, but a really weird one that let you sacrifice 2 specific triggers, including the last dog, to superior ride a Blaster Blade. Now, it's a grade 1. That lets you countercharge whenever a Blaster Blade is placed in front of it if your Vanguard is a Blaster. Also, for the sake of targeting it sure does have Blaster in its name, so... The last dog is Flugel. She's a pink King Charles critical that gives a Blaster Blade the ability to resand for a counterblast and cycling back to deck. While it does mean that you're running old school 5,000 power, 10,000 defense triggers, that's the old school 5k trigger that keeps putting itself back in deck without being part of one of those newfangled divine skills. Oh yeah, and I keep on saying a Blaster Blade, like there's more than the OG and its iterations. Because there is technically a grade 3 form introduced in the G format. It's just an 11k that retires anything short of a trigger for a counterblast, and searches for a card with Blaster Blade in its name, when stored upon by any of those Saber strides that I mentioned before. Boosting up to 14k with Alfred Saber's ability means one on rearguard is able to actually hit a 13k Vanguard unboosted, so that's pretty good. Then, the final support card for Blaster is Retrain of the other trigger part of the Barkle ride line, which actually straight up went straight from a grade 0 to a grade 3. Nulu lets you bottom deck a Blaster Blade card from your drop zone on place to gain 5,000 power, thus making it 1/4 of a Legion on its own. Then, it gains shield and the ability to intercept because that's funny. Oh yeah, I guess there's another Lu, isn't there? This one's just not a Blaster. Grade 2 Lu does superior call a Grade 2 Blaster from your deck after he attacks when boosted by one of the Dog Squad though, empowering not only himself but what he calls with that 3k power boost. Basically, you do this first, go get a Blade, focus that Blade to resand, and then attack with it again. Multi-attack isn't just for Axel decks after all. God, G-Format was so good for the days of chaos! Then the dark times came, when everyone got scared of Geese and Bushwood said the entire history didn't matter and rebooted the game completely. But hey, that means a new Blaster Blade. This time around it retires anything in the front row at the cost of a Counterblast and a Soul Blast, which is new to Blaster kind. At least all grade 2s are 10ks now, and he's got a crit on Vanguard because they want your grade 2s turns to matter. While that's sadly it for Blaster Blade himself, he did happen to get 3.5 new grade 3s, a new form of MLB, and a few support cards. So let's talk about that, shall we? Okay, so there's actually a lot more than that, but we're just trying to focus on the avatar's growth over the ages, and not every single build with every single card. Yeah, I need to get to today's real event, so keeping things simple, let's go over the last Majesty Lord Blaster first. Or, I guess we second, because we already kind of went over the new one, and history doesn't really move in a linear fashion when you're a time traveler. Anyways, this boy here is straight up an 18k Vanguard, making it one of the strongest defensive cards in the game to this day. He also gets a crit and a third drive on your turn with the 2 Twins in Soul. Then when he attacks, he can eat up 2 of your rear guards like a baby Greedon to spam some Force Gifts. You know, the thing that this reboot introduced that is very paralyzing to the common gameplay and why I guess some people don't like V format. That effectively gives you 3 gifts per turn as long as you're able to re-ride. Then the other MLB is scary for a different reason. And yes, I said 2. The anime decided to make me care about Link Joker for the first time ever by giving the blasters a Messiah form. This one uses the power of the commas to power up by calling blasters to open circles during drive checks, and then gain the power and crit of all these blaster boys, potentially giving you some pretty rough OTKs. Especially if you go with the critical granting force 2 markers on this one. Needless to say, this is a very fun Crystal Lesser Premium build. Especially now that we have so many different blaster name units that you can do a funny Highlander build. That's right, Lyrical and Chaos, Paladins can do it too. Probably the coolest one though is this generation's Gancelot. Okay, this one's big. Why did all the other cards turn small? Very similarly to Peace Saber, he gives Blaster Blade the ability to become a Vanguard. While it doesn't mean you get a 5 drive check stride turn like before, this wasn't restricted to a single blaster. So you can still get 4 different drive checks on a turn, but between 3 different attacks, without the Counter River trigger, which I'm slowly starting to realize may have been inspired by all these Gancelot combos. I guess that there was a decent Alfred that let you power up your blasters near Alfreds and whatever. I don't know, I never really played it. Oh yeah, you remember how I said 3.5 different grade 3s? That's because Blaster Blade got a pseudo stride and the retrain of his previously unmentioned upgrade, Expulsate the Blaster. This one has the ability to attack the entire board while harkening back to his days of being a Thing Saber by restanding with a rewrite into Blaster Blade after attacking and paying a cost. The dagger in this one is that if you don't have a blade ready, you do instantly lose. But let's be real, we're not really riding this without having the avatar prepared. As for Amos' V support, there's a couple cards that we could talk about here. Well, a lot more, but once again, I'd like this video not to be a 12-hour TED Talk. Unless that's the kind of content you guys want, in which case you guys let me know in the comments below. Starting off with an easy one, I guess I already did kind of mention that all forms of Wingle Brave act the same kind of way. This time the Wing-Eared Coney checks the top 7 cards for any blaster after it or an attack and boost hits the Vanguard. This gives you some insane turn 1 aggression if you can field a handful of these guys right off the gate. Your opponent's either going to have to take 3 damage and let you tutor 3 to 4 more cards, or guard a bunch of turn 1 attacks, and some way some serious starting hand size. Very good, boy! I just wish I could take that sword out of this mouth for a second and replace it with some doggy treats. Next up is Starcall Trumpeter, a retrain of one of the Order's oldest allies that previously didn't really do anything. This time I do though. On place, with both a counter and soul blast, you can return both the blaster and from the drop zone to hand. Plus 2 cycle is always nice, especially if one of those pieces was instead soul when paying the cost. Then also becomes a funny 10k booster. Not for a Messianic, but all the other blaster decks in this generation still absolutely loved it. Okay, fine, unblur it. The last card I want to talk about before revealing the new blaster blade is this order. When Light and Darkness intersects is just that. An order that supports both Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark. This basically lets you search for them out depending on which version that you currently control, or the Knight of Chaos himself if you already have both on board. Consistency is key in this game, so a piece that can search all 3 pieces of the puzzle while still being cycled by that little trumpet girl we just mentioned before is pretty sweet. And that is the last blaster card that we got. Nope, I already went over new MLB. The Cordelia just helps you boost with your grade 2s to get multi-attack, then the Dark Girl specifically catered for Blaster Dark, and the grade 2 helps you search for blasters. Alright, that's all. See you guys for the video in the morning. Alright, it's good morning. Let's go read some cards. And after an hour of refreshing, these cards are now up. I should really be talking about the Alma Jesters, especially with how much you guys know I love Sophie Bell. 1 second. Manga card, the new guy. I'm not going over it in full. However, these were revealed while I was waiting on Blaster Blade. Let's go say one thing. Alfred power-ups, plus 2k with every ally. Gets a crit if you have 4 or more cards. This is literally V Blaster Blade. Grade 3 does a retire, does a bind. This is the Blaster Bladest deck in all of Dragon Empire. I have to build it. I already like the manga protagonist, but more on this will come in a future video. You know what to do if you want more details on this or the Alma Jesters that I just completely skipped over. I like Valjaruna a lot. Alright, let's go on to the Blaster Blade. I haven't actually looked at this yet. I've literally been refreshing for the last hour until the card actually finally came up. So, what we got here? Blaster Blade, the Vanguard. Tachihale, Boku Bunshin. Hit up the avatar. I've said both of them. So we got 2 different skills. Ooh, I like this first one already without clicking on it. Okay, we click on it. Cool. I saw the words MLB and Soul. And that's all that mattered to me. So if you're Vanguard with MLB as Soul, this Vanguard's visual power is 18,000. V-Blade's back. This is VMLB. This is VMLB all over again. 18k base. Yes, let's freaking go, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my god. Okay, he's got 2 other skills. And hands. So he's got a soul skill and a hand skill and a Vanguard skill. Sure. Vanguard, we'll just read that because I read it first and it's the quickest one. Energy Blast 3, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. Awesome, we have an energy skill. Keeps with the Blaster Blade of Blaster Blades. And that's any opponent's rear guard. That's pretty sick. Alright, the main one. This is the big one probably. This is the longest effect. In hand, at the end of battle that your Vanguard attacked, costs Counter Blast 1. Find one of your grade 3, I feel like it's going to restand. Buy one of your grade 3 Vanguard with Blaster in its name, and only one Royal Paladin in its clan. Okay, cool, so it cares about the Royal thing. Ride this card at stay, he gets +5 until end of turn. Until the end of the battle, this unit attacks, ride the card bound. That was right. Okay, yes, it does restand, and I was correct in that matter. So effectively, I've already got a notification, probably from a person inviting us. So we have something that gives you 18k MLB. This is all that matters to me. Then when it gets placed, you can retire everything, meaning the Blaster Blade, and you do get to re-ride this by, is that cost big? Counter Blast 1, no, Counter Blast 1's nothing. So for Counter Blast 1, you're able to get 4 drive checks in a turn, because remember, MLB does give you 3 drive checks. And then have a 15k. The 15k doesn't seem that scary, but I guess you save a booster for it, so it's like, dude, this is sick. Okay, I'm happy. I'm happy I waited for this. I'm happy I refreshed for the last hour and a half. Since I woke up at like 6:30 and just saying, Blaster Blade the Vanguard. I need these in English. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of video. Don't forget to support me using code SkyRage on Raise Energy. That I don't even really talk about Raise anymore. Thank you, Kairos.